feels awkward. Silence and solitude, something I assume that most people struggle with. We tend to have some sort of noise happening all the time, whether it's always listening to music, having Netflix on in the background while we are studying or making food. We have a habit of needing to always have our minds be stimulated. If there is a lull in our day, we'll pull out our phones, or maybe seek out others to talk to fill that silence, or do anything else to fill the space and make us feel productive. We struggle with silence. We struggle, depending on whether you're introverted or extroverted, with being alone from time to time. But if we look at this spiritual discipline through a different lens, we will come to understand the importance and the immeasurable value that it has. So first, we need to overcome the preconceived thought that solitude is boring time alone with our thoughts. That's not it at all. Solitude is intentional time with God. It is temporarily withdrawing from the world to be in the presence of God. We have our example of this through the life of Jesus in Mark 1. We see that Jesus spends a day healing people, and on the following morning he went by himself to an isolated place to pray, and was there for some time before his disciples came and got him. This was an occasional practice that Jesus had, withdrawing from the noise and company of others to spend time with the Father. Total transparency, this is a discipline I suck at. I always have something on. If I have to do work around the house, I have a podcast playing. If I'm doing dishes, I got a show going. If I'm working, I got music on. All in themselves are not bad things, but when we are unable to do tasks without listening to something, it makes it difficult for us to hear God. It makes us realize how we are actually unable to embrace silence. When we think about God speaking, our minds can often go towards the loud examples, whether that's hearing an audible voice, a word of knowledge from a friend, hearing a lyric or line in a sermon that speaks directly to you. But what about the moments where God speaks in very quiet ways, like through experiencing his creation, or the subtle thought that causes you to pause because you don't know where it came from? In the Old Testament, there was a prophet named Elijah. And in 1 Kings 19, he is running for his life from the current king because he had just killed all the false prophets. Elijah is on his own, running for his life, and he came to a cave where he could rest. There he came to a cave where he spent the night, and the Lord said to him, it's 1 Kings 19, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah replied, "I have zealously served the Lord God Almighty, but the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too. Go out and stand before me on the mountain," the Lord told him. And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire there was a sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And a voice said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" It was in the whisper that the Lord speaks to Elijah. If we are unable to stop, seclude ourselves from the world around us, turn off the noise that is happening around us, we may miss opportunities to hear what he may want to say to us. Henry Nouwen once said, "Solitude is not a private therapeutic place." And it's not. It's a place where we can go to escape the chaos that is around us. It's a place where we can go to encounter the presence of God. And silence goes hand in hand with solitude. Some of you may be thinking, how do you find silence and solitude when I live in Metro Vancouver? To begin, use those little lulls in your day. When you are driving and you hit a red light, turn off the music or podcast and sit silently. When you go for a walk or a run, don't take your phone, just listen to the sound of nature. For those who want to schedule a chunk of time out of your day for this, take a drive somewhere outside the city to a more secluded area and just sit in silence. Make this a part of your daily rhythm. Take 5 to 10 minutes in the morning and just sit in silence and listen before you go on to the next thing. I had a win this morning. I sat in complete silence for 7 minutes. We cannot expect ourselves to all of a sudden spend 6 hours in silence, listening for God. That's not realistic. Begin where you can, and maybe right now it's 1 minute, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 15. Whatever you think you're able to do, just start there and see how being in silence and solitude will help you encounter God.